So the Golden State Warriors are currently in a really interesting place, as there is a ton of things that they can potentially do to, I think, not only revive this team, but kind of reboot the success that they were able to, of course, create a couple of years ago. Again, there's a lot of different ideas being thrown around about what the Golden State Warriors should do, and one of them, of course, does happen to obviously be moving on from Chris Paul. Now, again, I thought Chris Paul going to the Golden State Warriors was a weird trade in the first place. I mean, I understand that they did have to trade Jordan Poole. It was very, very obvious that they had to move on from him, and Jordan Poole did not have the greatest season at all for the Washington Wizards. Again, they were very, very lucky not to be the worst team in the whole entire NBA. But of course, it definitely kind of seemed like a bit of a lose-lose for both teams in that trade. But almost, if you're a Warriors fan, you're just kind of happy that you don't have to pay Jordan Poole $30 million for the foreseeable future. And now, I guess there is an opportunity for them to kind of clear Chris Paul's name from this roster altogether. And what I mean by that is, Chris Paul, from my understanding, he's $30 million or so that he is guaranteed for this, for his last season on this contract isn't actually guaranteed. So there's a lot of speculation out there that the Warriors are not even going to try and trade Chris Paul, but are going to be trying to just waive him completely, clearing $30 million of cap space so they can go out and potentially sign some players. I think this is a fantastic idea for them to do. I don't think Chris Paul really fits on this team. And I think the Warriors know that Chris Paul does not fit on this team at all. Now, there are teams, of course, who are interested if the Warriors would like to use that, I think, different avenue of maybe facilitating a trade. But even if they don't decide to, I think, facilitate a trade, a bunch of teams are still going to be interested in signing him. Again, one of those big teams that are really interested in signing Chris Paul is actually the San Antonio Spurs. It is being reported that the Spurs could be a suitor for Chris Paul this offseason. That's being reported by Mark Stein. It's being said that they are not only interested in trading for him, but are extremely interested in signing him if he does get waived. And I think this is really, really interesting for Chris Paul here, because it's really tough to know how many years Chris Paul does have left in the NBA, as he is 38, I believe, turning 39, which is insane. But if he believes he has another 2 years or so left in the NBA, going to the Spurs would be the most fantastic idea I think he could possibly do. And if the Warriors wanted to facilitate a trade with the Spurs, there's always a way that they could, I think, maybe make something, of course, happen where, who knows, maybe because the Spurs have so much cap, they could literally just trade Chris Paul to the Spurs and bring back, like, Trey Jones and, like, a couple second-round picks or something like that. And if you're the Spurs, you 100% do that. Again, I don't know if they're going to be moving with Jones forward. Definitely not as their starting point guard. I think eventually he could be a very nice backup point guard in the league. But Chris Paul on the San Antonio Spurs makes a ton of sense. As I mentioned, he didn't have the greatest season. He, of course, only started 18 games. He only played 26 minutes a night. But in the 26 minutes, he was still able to average 9 and 7. I feel like if he was able to go to the Spurs, though, and play with a guy like Wembanyama and Devin Vassell, don't be surprised if Chris Paul goes back to having, like, a 10 assist kind of season. And that's not too far-fetched to say, considering his season before this Warriors one, he was averaging 9 assists, and the season before that, he was averaging 11. There's no reason why Chris Paul couldn't go to the Spurs team, add extremely good veteran leadership, and of course be an elite playmaker for Wembanyama for like the next 2 years. The reality is as well, the next year the Spurs might make the playoffs, but I think having Chris Paul on a 2-year deal is even more beneficial, because on the second year, you're going to be developed enough to be a playoff team. The Spurs could realistically bring in Chris Paul at the point guard position. If they get lucky in the lottery, maybe draft like a Basilis kind of guy who's like a 6'10" small forward who is a really, really good shooter and a really good shot creator. Let's just say they can do something like that. If they maybe even go out and sign like a power forward in free agency, which they definitely will have the cap space to do, a starting five of like Chris Paul at the 1, Vassell at the 2, Basilis at the 3, whoever they sign at power forward, and then Wembanyama at the 5 with like dudes like Keldon Johnson and Jetty Osman and whoever they go and sign in free agency off the bench, that could be an elite team for sure. Again, still definitely developing, but it makes a ton of sense. So again, there's a ton of positives for the San Antonio Spurs if they wanted to do it. Possibly even more positives from a Golden State Warriors standpoint as well, as you are realistically clearing $30 million. I know they're still like, I think, well above the tax, but considering Klay Thompson is a free agent who I think was on like $45 million, I don't even think he'll come back. There are a ton of rumors that the Orlando Magic are going to offer him a seriously big and long deal. They need a ton of shooting on that Magic squad. They are one of the worst shooting teams in the league, and you can't beat that if you're in the playoffs. So again, they're probably going to decline Joe Ingles' option, do a couple of things here and there, sign Klay Thompson to a deal that's just not worth the Warriors bringing him back. And then, yeah, you do that if you're the Warriors, you lose the 40 to 45 million that you're paying Klay. Again, the 30 million you were paying Chris Paul, the other couple of free agents here and there. The only players you're realistically going to be paying are Steph, Draymond, Wiggins, and Kevon Looney, from what I know, other than like their rookies, right? There's another opportunity here for them to also trade Andrew Wiggins. I still think they should probably keep Draymond, but there's ways they could look to trade him. I'm sure there'll be a ton of interest in the NBA. But, I mean, there's a real opportunity for them to kind of reset with a core of Steph, Draymond, and Kuminga, where you could probably definitely sign a couple of really good free agents here and there. There's opportunities to, of course, you know, go out and get players on pay cuts too. A lot of players want to live in San Francisco. A lot of players want to play for the Warriors. There's always that opportunity. Again, there's the opportunity that I think would be so awesome if they were to decide to move on from Draymond. Could you imagine if they drafted Bronny and brought in LeBron? I mean, having LeBron and Steph play together finally would be something that I think every NBA fan wants to see. And again, having a starting five of like Steph with LeBron, Kuminga, Looney's probably still going to be there. Some other dudes that will probably sign over. Wiggins if they don't move on from him. There's a ton of different things the Warriors can do by clearing Chris Paul's cap space. There's a ton of things they can do from letting Klay Thompson walk. A ton of things they can do from possibly trading Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green. You know, if they were to trade Andrew Wiggins, you could always throw in extra picks to bring in some very solid role players up. Again, this is kind of a win-win for both moves here. I think the Spurs getting Chris Paul is a really awesome thing for them. And the Warriors moving on from Chris Paul and saving themselves a ton of salary cap is just super ideal for their franchise. But of course, if you haven't already, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Comment what you guys think about this all down below. Do you guys think the Warriors should move on from Chris Paul and maybe even Klay Thompson? Who else do you think they're going to trade away? Should the Spurs, of course, go after Chris Paul? I'd very much like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions down below. But as I was saying, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment. And I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.